welcome to Peace of the Past, where history is not loud, it is a whisper, a candle's glow, a parchment's crinkle, a tale of the past whispered softly to you. Here we wander the quiet corridors of forgotten places, breathe in the stillness of the centuries, and find calm in the echoes of the past. So get cozy, come closer, and let the past whisper to you. You awaken in darkness, cocooned in the sour aroma of sweat and damp straw. All around you is the faint rustle of a one-room hut stirring to life, a cough from your husband, the soft whimper of a child, the shuffle of a chicken underfoot. Your bed is nothing more than a sack stuffed with last year's straw, now flattened and musty. It pokes through the threadbare linen covering to prick at your skin, and you absently scratch at the red bites left by the fleas that share your sleeping space. In the night, you felt them crawling, but this is normal. A rat skitters over your bare foot and disappears into a gap in the wattle and daub wall. You hardly flinch. You're used to these nightly visitors. In the corner of the hut, a goat shifts on its tether, and a pair of hens cluck softly, roosting on a beam. People and animals live under the same roof, especially through the night, sharing body heat in the winter and space always. The air is thick with the mingled smells of human and animal, stale sweat, manure, sour milk, smoke from last night's fire, lingering like a ghost. A feeble dawn light seeps through the crooked wooden shutters, pale gray, revealing dust motes dancing above you. You blink and pull a woolen blanket, scratchy and full of moth holes, tighter around your shoulders. It's one of your prized possessions, this blanket passed down from your mother. Thin as it is, it kept you alive through last winter's freeze, when ice crept on the inside of your walls. Now, in milder weather, it's little comfort against the early morning chill. But comfort is a luxury you do not know. In 1325, you did not sleep deeply. No one really does. Not on a lumpy straw mattress, alive with bedbugs, not with hunger pinching your belly or worries gnawing your mind. Your back aches from yesterday's labors. Every joint is stiff as you push yourself upright. For a moment, you sit on the edge of the straw sack and inhale slowly, adjusting to the aches that never fully leave your body. This morning is like any other in your life. Dawn means duty. You rub your eyes with work-roughened fingers, dislodging a bit of sleep in straw. There is no mirror here to show your reflection, but you don't need one. At 27, your face is already creased with lines of toil, etched by sun and worry. Your hair, once perhaps a rich brown, is dulled by dust and tied back in a limp braid. A few quick scratches to your scalp. You know there are lice, but there's little to be done. Quietly you stand, careful not to wake the youngest child, sleeping on a pile of rags by your side. The dirt floor is cool under your bare feet. You've long since hardened them to resist the occasional chicken bone or sharp pebble. You step around a puddle where the roof leaked rainwater in the night. One more thing to fix when there's time, but there is never time. From a hook on the wall, you take a simple clay cup and tip it to your lips, drinking the leftover sip of ale from yesterday, because the water in the bucket is from the stagnant pond. There's no thought of a morning shower or a refreshing bath. Such indulgences are unheard of. If you're lucky, you bathe once or twice a year in a nearby stream, but only in summer's heat. Instead, you grab a wooden bucket by the door, which holds a few inches of rainwater collected overnight. The water is murky and icy cold. A dead mosquito floats on the surface. You splash it on your face anyway. The shock of the cold water steals your breath, but it does help shake off the clinging cobwebs of sleep. It doesn't refresh you so much as remind you of the chill of death that's always looming. The water's bite feels like the grave for an instant. You shiver, goose flesh rising on your unwashed skin. It will have to do. At least you manage to rinse a bit of grit from the corners of your eyes. There's no soap, certainly none for a poor family like yours. If you're desperate, you might use a bit of sand or ash to scrub your hands, but this morning you simply wipe them on your apron. Your teeth you leave alone. There is no toothbrush, no paste. At best, you've sometimes chewed a twig from a hazel tree to freshen your mouth. You run your tongue over your teeth. They feel fuzzy and taste of sour ale, but at least most of them are still intact. Sugar hasn't yet invaded your diet to rot them. In fact, you've never tasted such a luxury as sugar. Yawning silently, you slip on your shoes, simple leather things, cracked and worn. They're more like slippers, really, just a thin sole of hardened hide. You often go barefoot in summer, but today you anticipate a long day in the fields and would prefer not to step on a thistle unshod. Over the linen shift you slept in, you don your clothes for the day, a coarse woolen kirtle, a kind of dress that was once forest green, but now is faded to the color of moss and mud. It laces up the front, and you tug it tight around your waist out of habit. Though the fabric hangs loose, you've lost some weight over the hard winter. These are your only clothes, save for a slightly nicer tunic you keep for Easter Mass, and perhaps, someday, your burial. They carry the smells of smoke, soil, and sweat embedded in every fiber. You can beat the dirt out of them now and then, even rinse them in water occasionally, but true washing with soap is rare. As you dress, a few lice fall from the folds. You pick one off your sleeve and crush it between your nails without a second thought. Everyone you know is infested with something. Lice, fleas, mites. It's simply part of life. Modesty is different in your world. Privacy is nearly non-existent. You dress in the open room as your husband pulls on his tunic and boots a few feet away. The children stir under their blankets at the noise. Soon you will need to rouse them to begin their chores, but for now, you let them cling to the last moments of sleep. They'll get no luxuries today, no more than you will. Before anything else, you mumble a quick prayer under your breath, just as you do each morning. Your lips move in a barely audible whisper. Thank you, Lord, for another day, or some semblance of that. You cross yourself, touching forehead, chest, left, right. It's automatic, the motion drilled into you since childhood. You thank God for allowing you to pass another night unharmed by evil, be it wandering demons or simply the nightmare of not waking up. There is evil everywhere in your mind, if not the devil himself, then hungry wolves, thieves in the dark, sickness that strikes without warning. Surviving the night is never taken for granted. You also whisper a plea for the day ahead. Please keep me and my family safe today. Let my husband not fall with the scythe. Let my children stay healthy. You know countless ways to die. You've seen them. A neighbor yesterday limped home with a bad cut on his leg from a scythe. You've already imagined how easily that wound could fester, how death might come for him through something as simple as an infected gash. So you pray because there is nothing else to be done. Your stomach rumbles, a hollow gnawing that never truly goes away. A peasant cannot work on an empty stomach, at least not well, and there is hard work to be done today. So you must eat something to fuel you through the morning. You stoke the hearth's embers from last night. A few orange coals wink back to life as you gently blow and feed them dry kindling. Smoke tickles your eyes and throat, curling up toward the smoke hole in the roof. There is no chimney in this humble home. When the small flame catches, you set a soot-blackened iron pot over it. This pot is perhaps your family's most valuable item. It's used for every meal. In goes a handful of yesterday's porridge, a mess of oats and peas that have gone gelatinous overnight, along with a splash of water to loosen it. You stir with a wooden spoon to heat it through. Thin wisps of steam carry the smell of boiled grains and a hint of onion. While that warms, you take the round loaf of bread resting on the table. It's a coarse brown bread made from rye and barley flour. Stone ground flour often contains bits of grit and stone. You've felt how it has sanded your teeth down over the years. The loaf is dense, hard as a rock now, because it was baked 4 days ago in the village's communal oven. You slice it with a short-bladed knife, each cut requiring effort and a steady hand not to slip. For breakfast, you and your family will have bread and something. That something today is the porridge, bulked out with a few beans and maybe a shred of last night's cabbage. On better days, you might have a bit of milk to drink, freshish milk from the goat if she's milking, or watered down ale brewed from barley. This morning, there is a little milk. You skim off the cream, a thin layer, to save for churning. Then pour the milk into rough clay cups for the children. By now, the rest of the household is awake. Your husband shrugs on his rough woolen cloak and steps outside to relieve himself. You can hear the splatter just outside the door and the low groan of relief he makes. You remind him to dump the chamber pot later. Last night's urine, saved in a wooden bucket, will be used to soak hides or maybe to help bleach linen if you ever get linen to bleach. Nothing is wasted in your world. Even human waste has its uses. Your eldest, a girl of 8, is coaxing the embers higher to toast the bread. She spears a chunk of bread on a long forked stick and holds it over the flames until it smokes and crisps. Meanwhile, you dole out the warm porridge into a few wooden bowls. It's thin and unappealing to the eye, more of a gruel, but it's warm and that is something. You crumble the toasted bread into the bowls to soften it. Breakfast is meager as always. A mouthful of rough bread, a spoonful of bland porridge. The children eat quickly, sopping up every drop. You remind them to chew well. You can't afford them choking or wasting a single crumb. Your own stomach protests as you give the largest share to the kids. But what mother wouldn't? Besides, they'll be working too and need strength. You take a few gulps of small beer, essentially weak ale, from a wooden cup. It tastes sour, slightly yeasty. Water alone is suspect. You know better than to drink straight from the pond or stream if you can help it. So your family brews ale every week, a thin brew just strong enough to kill the worst germs. Even the children drink it, in moderation. As you swallow, you glance at the storage chest near the wall where the rest of your food supply is stored. It isn't much. A few more loaves of that hard bread, a wheel of goat cheese with a fuzzy rind, and a sack of dried peas and beans. Hanging from the rafters are some strings of garlic and onions and clusters of herbs, sage thyme, drying for use in soups. You have a little salt, precious and hoarded, that you traded for last autumn. You'll use a pinch to flavor tonight's stew, maybe. Meat, you have none now. It's rare to see meat, unless a hen stops laying and you must stew her, or on the odd holy festival, when perhaps a rabbit might be caught. Hunting in the Lord's forest is illegal for you. His gamekeepers would as soon shoot a poacher as a boar. So any meat you consume is typically pork from the family pig you slaughter at Martinmas, or salted fish if you live near a stream. You pay for the right to fish, of course. Today there is no meat, and that's ordinary. You might not taste meat for weeks or months at a time. Still, you count yourself fortunate that you aren't starving at the moment. You know hunger in a way people, centuries later, could hardly imagine. Not 10 years ago, the crops failed around here. Relentless rains, then early frosts. The Great Famine of 1315, they called it later, though at the time you only knew that nothing grew and people were dying. You remember the desperate things folks did to survive, digging up roots and even stripping bark off trees to boil and eat. That famine took 2 of your neighbors and nearly took your little brother. You recall your mother boiling nettles and moss to fill your bellies. Some even ate their seed grain meant for planting. Others ate the Lord's draft horses that had died of disease. There were rumors, terrible whispers, that in distant villages, people resorted to cannibalism in those bleak years. You don't know if it was true, but the fact that it's believable is horror enough. So today, you are not starving, and that small fact is a blessing you don't take lightly. There is bread, there is pottage, there is even a bit of milk and cheese. This will sustain you through the morning's labors. It has to. You wipe the last smear of porridge from the bowl with your finger and lick it clean, wasting nothing. Already, your mind is turning to what you might scavenge for supper. Perhaps wild greens or a handful of berries from the hedgerow, if any remain in this season. But supper is a long way off. Breakfast done, you adjust your clothing for the day's work. Over your wool dress, you tie on a patched linen apron to protect it somewhat from mud and muck. The apron was once white, maybe, but now it's the color of dust, stained with old berry juice and grease. You knot a scarf over your hair, a simple cloth to keep the dirt out of it and to show modesty. A married woman's hair is not for the world to see after all. The cloth covers your head and is drawn under your chin. Your attire is humble and practically identical to that of every other peasant woman in the village. A linen smock or shift is the base layer, though the fabric is coarse and undyed. Over that, a long woolen gown, the kirtle, sleeveless or with simple sleeves, in a dark, muted hue. Dyes are expensive, so your clothing tends toward the natural tones of sheep wool or cheap dye lots. In colder months, you have wool hose, stockings, to cover your legs, and you'd wrap strips of cloth around your lower legs to keep the drafts out. A wool cloak or shawl is your only defense against the cold wind. Your husband's clothing is similarly basic: a linen shirt, woolen breeches, and a knee-length tunic belted at the waist. He has a cloak of undyed wool for cold weather and a felt cap he wears outdoors to keep the sun off. On his feet are clumsy leather boots, cracked and often leaking. Everything he wears, you have sewn or mended yourself from hand-me-down fabrics or roughly tanned leather. Nothing fits perfectly. Nothing is comfortable by modern standards, but they don't need to be. They simply need to not fall apart. Comfort. You pause on that word in your mind. What is comfort? A full belly, a warm fire, a day without pain. These are comforts to you. Soft beds, fine clothing, leisure time. Those are fantasies beyond imagination. Your clothes itch and scratch. The wool is thick and never fully soft, even after many wears. But you don't really notice the itch anymore. Your skin is tough like the rest of you. There is a small wooden comb on the table with a couple of missing teeth. You take it and run it through the hair of your youngest child, wincing as it snags on a tangle. She yelps softly and you shush her while picking out a louse the comb caught. You pinch it between your fingernails, a tiny, satisfying crack. With so many parasites around, it's impossible to stay clean or itch-free. Flea bites pepper everyone's ankles. Lice eggs cling stubbornly to seams of clothing. A bath might rid you of them temporarily, but you won't see a real bath for months. When the combing is done, you settle the little girl onto your hip. She doesn't have shoes. Few peasant children do, until they absolutely need them. Her tiny feet cling to you, calloused just like yours, from toddling on dirt and twigs. She plays absently with the frayed edge of your shawl as you gather what you need for the day: a coil of rope, a sickle, a clay jug for water. There isn't much to carry. The truth is, you own almost nothing beyond some tools and the clothes on your back. Perhaps a couple of wooden bowls and spoons, a single copper pot, one needle, a knife. All your family's worldly possessions could fit in a modern closet with room to spare. Before heading out, you bank the fire so it doesn't die completely while you're away. Fire is life. You can't let it go out, or you'd have to beg an ember from a neighbor, or rub sticks together in hope. Carefully, you rake ashes over the small flame, dampening it so it smolders safe. Your hut will be empty all day, or left ajar to let the goats and chickens wander in and out. There is no concept of locking up. You have no lock, and little worth stealing anyway. You take one last look at the dim interior. Straw floor strewn with a few toys your children carved from sticks. The pile of hay that is your bed. The smoky rafters. It isn't much, but it's home. Daily labor and toil. Outside, the world is painted in dawn's colors. Pale blue sky, mist clinging to the fields. You inhale the earthy scent of dew on soil and the sharper odor of the pigsty nearby. Roosters are crowing, their raspy cries mixing with the lowing of cattle from a distant pasture. Another day of toil begins in your medieval village. There's a saying you've heard: from dawn to dusk, 16 hours in summer and 8 in winter. That's the length of a workday, give or take. Today will be no different. Your husband has already gone ahead to the fields with other village men, carrying scythes over their shoulders. The grain is ripe and it's harvest time, the busiest, most important time of year. Every able hand is needed, including yours and the older children's. If the harvest isn't brought in quickly, a sudden rain or early frost could ruin it all and spell famine. Everyone knows this keenly. But before you join the harvesters, there are morning chores closer to home. You set the 8-year-old to watch her toddler sister and collect eggs from the hens. Meanwhile, you grab a yoke, a wooden beam that balances on your shoulders, and hook 2 buckets to it. It's your task to fetch water for the day. The village well is on the other side of the green, a couple of 100 paces away, and you trudge there with the other women, your footsteps already heavy. At the stone-ringed well, you wait your turn behind 3 neighbors, shifting the yoke to ease its bite into your shoulder. The women murmur greetings. All of you are already perspiring in the morning humidity. When your turn comes, you drop the bucket down and hear the distant splash. You wind the creaking rope back up, hand over hand, the bucket now heavy with brackish water. Thank you for spending this quiet moment in history with me here at Piece of the Past. If you enjoyed your stay in the candlelight, please subscribe so the next story finds you. Until then, may your nights be calm and your dreams timeless.